And welcome to Talking Tech. This is where we get to talk about library technology news, but also take all of your questions online. So we're live streaming on a bunch of different channels. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat. We'll answer them online if we can. If not, we'll get back to you on it. In the interim, we tend to read off some technology stories and talk about them and what interests us. So I'm Shawn, your Emerging Services and Technologies Librarian. With me is...
I'm Charley. I'm the Guiding Ohio Online Learning Coach here at the Madison Public Library.
All right. So I think we're ready to go, Charley. So
right.
You want to jump into a story?
I don't know if I really want to start with this one, but
yeah, let's not start.
Let's
start
not start
note,
with that
huh?
one.
Yeah.
Let's start with
how about the FCC? Either one.
Either one.
I like either
So
one.
let's do. Yeah, why not? So, Turtle Beach.
Turtle Beach.
Yes. So
my very first CD-ROM was a Turtle Beach back in the day.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, now mainly known for peripherals like headsets and controllers and things, has bought out the other controller maker, PDP, which also makes a lot of different controllers and headsets and all that kind of stuff. In a just a consolidation of the craziness of third-party controller manufacturers. So, but Turtle Beach is buying them for $118 million.
118, huh?
Yes, and they're going to continuously just work on new controllers and other things, but especially with PDP announcing a new guitar controller coming out, so I'm kind of excited for that. So we'll see how that goes. So Guitar Hero controller, which is kind of nice. Haven't seen any new ones of those for a long time. Because the last people that made those was Mad Catz, and those things go for insane money.
Yeah, those were crazy expensive.
Because that was the last thing Mad Catz did before they went out of business.
Yep.
So we'll see how this goes, because I'm interested, because I know Turtle Beach has been, I would dare say, mixed quality for a while. And I know, PDP is no better, but I feel like they still have come out with a little bit better than Turtle Beach, but I'm hoping to see that maybe this acquisition would make some of their stuff a little bit better in terms of quality. So we'll see how that goes.
So I just shared our stream and checked to make sure everything was running. Yeah, it was me probably.
It will turn out.
Yeah, I don't count. All right. So that's great. It's kind of flashback. So, my very first CD-ROM.
Yeah.
Okay. So the CD-ROM that I bought, because my computer did not have one.
Yeah.
Was a Turtle Beach. So yeah. And it integrated with my Sound Blaster sound card.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes, exactly. I can remember. Don't ask me how much I spent for it, because it was like an entire Christmas and birthday allowance chunk at the time. It's pretty fascinating.
Especially back in the day, you notice how expensive these things were, and then you look at the resale price, depending on what it is.
I have articles somewhere, a 40 meg, not gig, 40 meg hard drive was like $5,000. The new low price of $5,000. So it was pretty awesome. I love those old ads. So let's talk about news in general. So CNET, which kind of was the bastion of technology news for the longest time. It was CNET, it was ZD. It was a couple of those places that they were your Wall Street journals, they were your Newsweeks, they were your people, those kind of quintessential. CNET got hammered recently because they were publishing AI generated stories, and they were full of misinformation. Bad facts, all that stuff. And so they're facing two fronts now. One, they've lost a lot of credibility. Like Wikipedia. Good morning, Morgan. Wikipedia and a lot of places that I know we think are sketchy, but they do list credible sources to things. They removed CNET from a list of credible sources.
Oh boy.
And the other thing they're facing is that they sort of do, but they have a writing staff, and the writing staff is rebelling. They're one of the largest unionized. Oh, there we go. There's our first spam chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you should be able to delete it as well.
You should be able to delete it out of the chat too.
Maybe not.
Yeah, there you go. It takes a second. So yeah, so hey, we got a spam chat. It's a good day. It's a good day for spam chats.
Like that fits in well since you were just talking about AI generated.
I know, and it was Sanskrit too, by the way. So yeah, so they now have one of the largest unionized technology staff.
Oh, jeez.
In the country, is my understanding. They're facing backlash. So again, don't use AI to kind of do shortcuts for you.
Yeah.
Now, where am I going to go for my technology news, like evaluating devices?
The evaluating devices, because Melanie uses it for evaluating devices. You could always use Consumer Reports, which we subscribe to as part of the library, but they don't cover everything. That's the thing.
That's my issue.
Consumer Reports has they have their zone. I mean, tires, washing machines, some of that stuff, but some technology stuff they just don't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Right. It's only computers and tablets and phones, but like if I want
earbuds and stuff like that, yeah. To be honest with you, it's now kind of going to an amalgam of sites and comparing reviews.
Takes work.
Well, actually, Google is doing a pretty good job of amalgamating. So if you search for something, they'll give you an amalgam result of different things. It's actually pretty good.
Yes, but now I'm disappointed because I used to just go to CNET because...
Yeah. Well, they may redeem themselves, but it is interesting. I mean, CNET was kind of the paragon for a while.
Right.
Of just, you went there, they had the stuff, the stuff, and they were unbiased. Now, I'm not saying AI isn't good for everything. I mean, I use it to like freshen up some of my text I put on social media, but I check it before I post it to make sure that it still is in English and makes sense.
I think that's a great use for AI and demonstrates the time-saving aspects of AI.
Okay. I don't know how well you can hear Melanie because she's not mic'd, but she said, it's a great use for AI. It does time saving. But again, you read the thing before you put it up. Even without AI, humans need to read things before they post. Before you click the button, make sure that you know
what you're putting out there.
What you put out there, and it's exactly what you want to say.
Exactly.
That prevents misspellings because I am good at misspelling things. So I check everything before I post. Or I have actually most of the time I have another human look at it and make sure, is this what I really want to say? If it's an important post. And or other things I submit. Everything gets checked more than once as best as possible. But yeah, so they're in some dire straits right now as far as their credibility and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how things go. I mean, we've had some pretty good AI scandals. I mean, we had the imaging thing with Wizards of the Coast, D&D, Hasbro. We've had this one. We've had a couple other ones. The Canada Air we talked about last time or the time before, where they had promised a customer something that they actually weren't going to do. The chatbot did, and then the judge in Canada said, nope, your bot represents you. You have to fulfill your obligations. So it's kind of interesting. So what else you got, Charlie? I'll jump off of this one.
Why not do the FCC? It's finally considered what speed broadband is now.
So they're updating what their minimum is? Okay.
So instead of 25 and 3 megabits per second.
So 25 down, 3 up?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now it's 100 minimum.
100 both ways?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's kind of, for the longest time, that's where libraries were at, was 100 megabits both directions. Now a lot of us are now more than that, or gigabit both directions, but whatever. I know most commercial places, your speed, unless you're in an area that has coverage issues, is probably already over 100 megabits. But I like that they have kind of a line in the sand, because they haven't really enforced that too much in the past. So it's nice to see anything. Is always good.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. So it looks like 120 megabit
okay.
will be at least supposedly minimum.
120.
But 100
is kind of their line in the sand.
So like 100 and like 120. So I'm assuming that's going to be 100 up, 20 down, or maybe it's the other way around.
No, it would be 100 down, 20 up.
Okay.
Up is always going to be smaller because ideally a person at home does minimal upload. It's just the minimum you need to send out requests and stuff like that to retrieve things. attachments, things like that.
Yeah.
Where like a library or someone like us that's actually serving content, we have content that comes off of our servers that goes out. It definitely, I say it. It definitely will affect. It'll affect people.
Mm-hmm.
So this will affect one of our listeners or watchers, I guess. This will affect West Virginia. Yeah. Like I said, in some of the areas where the infrastructure isn't solid, this should be kind of a rally call saying, okay, here is your minimum requirement. In some of the hollers and areas of West Virginia where they don't have adequate coverage and it's still dial up. This is kind of that line and says, hey, this is what we've got. Now, I'm assuming there's some exceptions because of environmental factors, infrastructure factors. I mean, FCC is going to send out fines. They're going to discuss it. They're going to go back and forth. There's going to be exceptions here and there. I mean, it's not a perfect scenario.
Mm-mm. And nothing that they say is a completely 100% thing right now.
It has to be enforced.
It's going to be enforced, and it's going to take a while for it to
absolutely
for everyone to meet the infrastructure for that.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, I guess if you do the 5G part, but
that's
the wireless.
That's where it's interesting to see where we're going, because some of the infrastructure issues are completely related to the lack of ability to run fiber, copper, or whatever to an area. And going back to West Virginia is a prime example of, because of the terrain in West Virginia, cell style internet is also very difficult, because you can't necessarily put a tower at the top of every single hill, every single mountain. That's just not feasible. But yet, if you don't, you have these dead zones. Like sometimes when I'm staying down there, I have absolutely no reception on my phone for anything, and so we have to use basically voice over IP with our cell phones through wherever we're staying through their internet connection, which tends to be long haul fiber most of the cases. Partially why they do long haul fiber a lot of places is because one, distance, and as far as bandwidth goes. Think of fiber as a 20-lane highway and copper as a 5-lane highway. Much same speed, everybody's going 70 miles an hour on the highway, but there's a lot more lanes to be on that highway. That's the difference between fiber and copper. The other thing, in all honesty, I'll be blunt, is in a lot of places, and I'm not picking one in West Virginia, this happens especially down in South America, is they run the lines, people climb up the poles, cut the lines, and recycle the copper for money.
Yep.
That literally happens in a lot of developing countries. It does happen in the U.S. There's no question about that. But like that's why Africa, South America, and parts of Asia are strictly fiber and or some sort of cell tower or microwave tower, because they minimalize what can be basically destroyed and sold for scrap.
Yeah.
Like I said, it does happen in the U.S. I mean, there are houses that get stripped for their copper pipes every day. But yeah, so it's kind of that's I like the line in the sand. So let's talk about Apple.
Oh boy.
So they kind of got out the gate with Siri, right? Because I would say Siri kind of beat everyone to the punch when it came to a digital assistant on your phone. They're really, really lagging behind when it comes to a more complex AI interface. And so instead of doing their own thing, instead of giving in to Microsoft, who owns a majority stake in the ChatGPT end of things, they're talking with Google. So Gemini, which is the Google answer to ChatGPT, and is the background going to be for Pixel phones and things like that.
Yeah.
Possibly Apple will be using that as well.
Okay.
So Siri will be powered by Google in theory.
Trying to think about that.
So Siri still is a digital assistant, but not truly an AI digital assistant. Doesn't have that background depth of computing power and information. So what they're looking at is, if they go with one, because right now it's Apple and Microsoft. That's the direct competition for a lot of stuff. What's your question, Millie?
My question is, I didn't think Apple ever went with other companies'
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. So what
is
Melanie
that
had
actually
said,
a departure for Apple as a business philosophy?
it's very rare that they go outside of their own infrastructure. So Melanie's question was, is it rare for Apple to go out? And yeah, it is. They keep everything in-house as much as they possibly can. The problem is, historically, the reason why Apple failed at certain times, why Apple owned the landscape at one point, and then kind of fell off the wayside for computers and stuff like that. Steve Jobs came back. They released the iMacs and the multicolored things and all of that. They released the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPod and all that. They stagnated. They weren't developing things in house, and they didn't have any entrepreneurial spirit, shall we say? And so, yeah, Apple kind of turned inwards, and unfortunately started doing a lot of navel gazing and just not really going forward. And that you can see it now. We've talked about it a little bit on the show. They've been doing that a lot lately. And so they had to make a choice. And so the people in charge of Apple right now, I think, are deciding how much are we going to do in-house? How much, are we going to go out? And if we're going to go out, who are we going to go to?
Well, because you can't go to Microsoft. That would be
you can't go to Microsoft because Microsoft is
like Hatfield and McCoy.
Pretty much. Hatfield and McCoy's is a good example. Going back to West Virginia, oddly enough.
That was not intentional.
But it was a good segue. But in essence, you're looking at Apple saying, okay, we're either going to have to dominate this and invest a lot of money into infrastructure and all this stuff, or we're going to need to partner with someone who isn't as much of a competitor to us. And for them, Google is not as much of a competitor. Microsoft is a much more direct competitor. Even though Microsoft really is in the phone market, Microsoft dominates the market in other ways for Apple. When it comes to PCs, they still dominate in PCs. They still dominate in a lot of other ways. They're still the operating system behind almost all of Apple's competitors.
All right, I guess I can follow that then.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So what else you got, Charlie?
Speaking of Apple.
Yeah, we should pause for a second. If you have any burning technology questions, please.
Besides my burning technology questions?
Besides Melanie's questions, but I'm glad that someone's asking questions. Feel free to ask us questions in the chat. And if you don't get an answer, we'll answer you back at some other time. And if you're watching this later in a stream, still post the questions in there. We'll answer you. Just make sure you give us good context. It's important so that we know what's going on, so we can hear and interact with you per se. So sorry about that, Charlie. What you got?
Speaking about Apple, they're following a class action lawsuit with their AirTags.
Oh, class action with AirTags. Okay.
Yes. Because judges and people in California see it as a type of stalkerish situation.
Well, it's definitely been used for that. There's no question.
Oh yeah, same with tiles and stuff like that as well. They've all basically been used. But Apple is getting the brunt of it.
Oh, of course, because they're the most popular.
Yes, so those AirTags are very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
I know Google and Apple have partnered in making an app for tracking said Apple AirTags and things. So, but essentially, Apple's under a class action lawsuit because of it. Yeah.
Well, I think, I vacillate back and forth on things like AirTags. The value of being able to tag your stuff and find it is important. There's no question about that, is being able to find those things and be able to find the stuff in your house, track the stuff, track nearby things. They use it for tracking pets, because the way Apple AirTags and a lot of the tags work is once they leave your proximity, any other device that listens to that network can pinpoint where it is. So let's say Fido runs away and you have an AirTag on their collar. They're out of your range, but they're near a bunch of other iPhones. You can still track Fido wherever Fido happens to be and recover your dog. I believe in that kind of technology. I think it's important, but I think, yes, we should have some restraints on that technology as well.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely been issues where people have put AirTags on persons, on objects, on things, watch Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman. Some of the little round tags that they were using in that movie remind me of AirTags, and there were several years prior to, but exactly the same use. People hiding it in shoes and in wallets and heaven knows where to track people.
Yeah, so
lawsuit, huh? Not surprised.
Just really big lawsuit. I wish I could read into it, but it's a Bloomberg article, and they want you to subscribe.
Yeah, it's a
so
paywall.
It's kind of a pain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think truly, the tracking part needs to calm down a little bit before
there needs
happens.
to be some security to it, I guess.
Yeah.
And we're always going to be dealing with open access to find FIDO versus controlled access to make sure that you're not tracking FIDO's owner.
I mean, I think it would be great if it was just a pre-installed thing on Androids as well, the tracker part.
Yeah.
That would make it 10 times easier to just be like, hey, there's like a tag following you around.
Yeah, I mean, that's when some people have noticed, because it will try to authenticate to your phone. And you're like, why is an Apple tag trying to authenticate to me? I don't own any of these.
Well, if you have the Android or Apple one installed, it will give you essentially like a compass, and it will pinpoint where it is and scan where it is. Hopefully in the future we'll see a kind of come together with Apple and maybe some other mobile devices that get that taken care of.
So let's jump over to Microsoft a little bit. So Microsoft kind of went all in with Office 365, which is a subscription version of Office. And depending on how you're connected, you get your Word, your Excel, your Outlook, your PowerPoint, not Publisher, because Publisher is going away. Microsoft is doing away with Publisher. I think we talked about that a couple of texts ago, but they're doing away with Publisher. But the subscription model, some people don't really like the subscription model. They don't want to pay a monthly fee. They don't want to have all of their stuff in a cloud that is locked up, theoretically, that if you stop paying for it, your stuff is held hostage in theory. And Microsoft is aware of that. Plus, there's entities like us. While we have Office 365 for our communications, we use it for our email and things like that. We still use a standard client on our PCs, and we're not the only one. And so the next version of Windows, which is currently called Office LTSC 2024, which basically says it's the long-term service channel. Long-term release is a fancy way of saying that this software will put out there. We're not going to make, we'll do security updates to it for about 5 years, and then we're going to make you do the next one. Instead of like where some of the other ones are more dynamic, we're changing constantly. So that's going to be coming out later this year. And so I'm going to call it Office 2024. It's going to be the next iteration. So the last one we had that was actually a physical thing, a client that could be put on a PC was 2019. And so it's been a couple of years. And there's some improvements. I'm reading, it's still kind of fresh right now, so there's not a lot of data on what's new in it, aside from Publisher will be gone. We all know that. I'm mourning the loss because I enjoyed Publisher. It was a good product. Yeah, a lot of people are sad about Publisher. It was a good product. But it'll be coming out, so there'll be an updated version of Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint, which is kind of their bread and butter for stuff. They have other ancillary things, but essentially that's their bread and butter.
So is that then to directly compete with Google's things and their Google Classroom kinds of things?
Is that a direct compete to Google Classroom? No, because schools aren't buying really Office. No, they're not. They're going with Google's cloud stuff because it's a lot easier for their infrastructure. They don't have to have printers, things like that. The only catch-22 on that, in all honesty, is by focusing on Google Classroom, if you get into an environment, and a lot of business environments aren't Google-based, they are Office-based or Microsoft-based, it is not an easy transition for some of these students. Some universities require Microsoft Office instead of Google for things. And a lot of businesses do not use Google for their infrastructure. They use Office and they use Teams and they use that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's free in a lot of ways for schools, not completely free, but free in a lot of ways for schools. It's easier to manage. They built it around Google Classroom and stuff like that. They've kind of built you this bubble. And that's the problem. You built a bubble, and then you get out to the rest of the world, and that bubble pops. And now you've got to figure out, okay, the student doesn't actually know how to interact with something like a pivot table or something like that may actually show up in a job interview or show up as a requirement of their job, because Google Sheets doesn't really do a good job of it.
Google Sheets was never meant as a database.
As a spreadsheet. Google Sheets is meant as a spreadsheet, but it's a very light spreadsheet. That's the thing. All the Google stuff is light. Just like the Microsoft Office 365 stuff, there's a very light version of it. That's what you're kind of dealing with, is this lightness where you may go into an environment where your Google training means absolutely nothing. It doesn't hold water whatsoever. And that's the one thing schools and some universities are facing is, while it's good for an internal thing and to help students manage everything and to keep the teachers and everybody interconnected, professors, teachers, whatever, it is not a great environment if you go into business and they hand you an Adobe product or a Microsoft product, and you've got to hurry up and it's sink or swim, So we provide mini books and as much training as we can for this stuff for people.
No, and that's part of what Charley can
And that's absolutely part of what Charley does. So
it's just that the high school students don't know that they need Charley.
The high school students don't know that they need Charley, and I would call them new adults. People recently graduated may need more help than actually traditionally we used to have. A lot of new adults need some technology skills that they did not get because of these insular bubble-like setups. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that they have consequences. All things have consequences.
Like not knowing how to use a mouse.
Not knowing how to use a mouse. Yeah, that's the other thing. Using tablets and using things and then being put into an environment where you have to use a mouse for specific reasons. There are reasons why mice are superior to a touchpad. There are times for that. So what do you got?
Kind of talking about Google.
Yeah, I figured Google would bounce on that one.
The tiniest bit of information that we can kind of divulge into today.
Mm-hmm.
Google Drive, now it's dark mode.
Yay, dark mode.
I know, right? Anytime there's a new dark mode for any little web app, I'm usually on top of that. Someone commented down in the comments section of this article, man, news must be slow today if they're talking about dark mode in Google Drive.
I'll be honest with you though, being a person who does not want to have their retinas seared out of their head by how white and bright some of these apps are, I tend to turn everything into dark mode.
Yeah.
That is my de facto default thing is dark mode for everything. My phone is set in dark mode. My PCs are set in dark mode.
Anytime there's the option for dark mode,
remove as much brightness as possible.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said about that. The computer guy wants to remove all of the brightness from your life.
I hope you noticed I did not comment.
I know you didn't comment on that. So
I guess since mine was kind of short, do you want me to do another one or do you want to do one?
I'll jump on another one.
Okay.
So, for a while there, the big hardware race was for mining Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was putting all of their money and all of their effort into making Bitcoin miners. Well, everything has shifted. And now it's AI hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So NVIDIA, which is currently leading the charge in creating AI hardware, oddly enough, because they have so much experience with graphics processing. That's why it's like, well, NVIDIA, aren't they a graphics company? Yes. All of the stuff that you do for a lot of the AI computations is the same stuff as the physics computations and all the stuff in the high-end gaming graphics cards. That's why gaming graphics cards become really hard to get a hold of, because first they were using them for Bitcoin mining, to create this online transferable, non-fungible token type currency. We've talked about Bitcoin for a while now. Please look at our previous streams. If not, send a message in the thing and I'll be glad to tell you about it. But now they're moving on to AI calculations. And the other one is Supermicro. So Supermicro originally started as a case company. All they did is make cases for PCs. And then they started making like server PCs, generic server PCs. Instead of buying a Dell or a Compaq or an HP at the time, you bought a Supermicro. Generally you bought it from the computer shop in town. You didn't buy it directly from Dell or Gateway or anything like that. But Supermicro has been chugging along. Like they make the back-end hardware for a lot of firewalls.
Mm-hmm.
They make the back-end hardware for a lot of filtering servers. And so, lo and behold, Supermicro, because they're riding AI, they're going to join the S&P 500.
Ooh.
So they went from a company who made computer cases that you would buy in the back of Computer Shopper for like $20 to S&P's 500. that tells you how much money is being dumped into AI and AI infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying good or bad or otherwise, but I'm saying we're following the money. You know, every news story is about AI. Everything is about this. Stuff is going to happen. So
yeah,
I found it fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So what else you got going there, Charlie?
Let's do.
As I check to see what's rolling through.
Sony is reportedly pausing PlayStation VR 2 production.
I saw that.
So because the headset, are they the same company as Sun Microsystems? Someone asked in the chat over there about your
Supermicro?
Yeah.
No. So Supermicro is not the same company as Sun. So Sun has always been Sun. Actually, Sun is part of Oracle. Sun was its own standalone company until probably
While
maybe
you talk about that, I'll be right back.
5-10 years ago at some point. Sun was its own company, but no, Supermicro and Sun are two different. Oracle owns Sun now. So good question.
I'll be right back.
All right, Charlie will be right back. So I'll jump on to another story then. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with TikTok. So currently, both parties in the House right now, the U.S. House, both parties are working on bills that could potentially block TikTok for the United States.
Okay, did you see
I did. So what did Sun do? Sun basically made high-end Unix and Linux systems. A lot of libraries, their entire infrastructure ran on Sun. Sun also did high-end graphics stations in the past. So Sunbox, Sparkbox was a high-end development box for some graphic stuff, high-end development for simulations and models. So like weather stations, TV stations that did weather. A lot of their back-end hardware was Sun. Because it was meant to chug along and do huge amount of computations. They produced their own processors, their own memory, just about everything, cases, everything. I still have a couple Sun boxes in my basement. I know that's a joke with everybody. I have old hardware in my basement. But yeah, a lot of libraries I used to manage back in the day, their entire infrastructure relied on Sun, Sun Spark stations.
Okay, did you see is that the same company as Sun Microsystems?
Yeah, I answered that already. Yeah.
Just double checking.
Yep. So TikTok banned in the US. So what's going on with this? Trying to follow where everything is. So technically the owner of the company that owns TikTok is actually not in China, though it is a Chinese company. Technically, TikTok is out of Singapore, which is not part of China. But the concern is that the Chinese government has undue influence on a Chinese company because of their laws. And that's what folks on both sides, again, Democrats, Republicans, independents as well, so I guess three sides, are concerned about. And their concerns are, the control of a very ingrained social media company is how much of this is going to be altered by requirements by the Chinese government, how much information is coming out, how much information is being pumped in. And it's an interesting debate to see. States have enacted laws. Ohio has a law that state government employees aren't allowed to have the app on their work devices.
Virginia does too.
And Virginia and a couple other places. If you were an employee of the state of Ohio, Virginia, and a couple other states, on your work-owned devices, you're not allowed to have the app. On your personal devices, there's still nothing wrong with you having it on there. And there's an interesting debate of, who has control. I mean, we've debated on this channel before about who has control when it comes to, Facebook and Meta, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it this week. All of those things. That question is definitely out there. Is these very ingrained social media companies, their undue influence, and how we follow that. So it's kind of interesting to see. I'm following this to see. This is not the first time we've debated over an app in the United States whether we would let it go through. It's been a while now, so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm not sure where my opinion is right now. Either way on the TikTok thing. If they ban TikTok, what will people doom scroll for hours on end? at their lunches. I don't know. It'll probably, it'll probably turn to Reels, or some other competitor will come into place.
I guess that was my question. If TikTok goes away, wouldn't some other competitor just try? I mean, because
if TikTok goes away, there's always going to be a competitor.
There was MySpace, and then there was other things. So there's always
MySpace is still around right now.
It seems like there's always a new thing. So I mean, TikTok's the thing now, but I mean, nothing lasts.
Nothing lasts forever. No, I mean, and that's the other thing. Social media shifts with this generation. So we have a generation of people who their social media is really email or IRC chat or something like that. We have generations that are Facebook. We have generations that are Instagram and Snapchat. And we have generations that are TikTok and Kick and Twitch. And those those social medias follow that generation. Ironically, going back to MySpace has had this weird resurgence in bands. Musicians. MySpace is the home for musicians. It's you go to MySpace now and it's pages promoting bands. It's very fascinating. So, yeah, we saw ICQ. Yep, Morgan and I are the ICQ generation, among other things. Gen Z is going to have an interesting aspect on, because this is, when I talk about shifting generations, Gen Z is very tied to TikTok. And so changing something with their platform, is going to be interesting. And it'll be interesting to see how they react to it. Will they be upset and never vote for them again, as if, Braxton had said in his comment, or will they just go meh and jump onto something else? It's very interesting to see, because there may be a huge chunk of a generation, that goes meh. I mean, MySpace was my generation as well, and we kind of meh out and we went to Facebook, and it wasn't, and a lot of us didn't look back. But ironically, like I said, all of these musicians have kind of claimed MySpace as their own and started making it. And I don't know if it's because like no one's here, so we're going to make it cool again. MySpace always had a music aspect to it, so that's the other thing.
I mean, that's the story. The lore is, different artists got discovered on MySpace.
Discovered on MySpace back in the day.
What are we going to do since Miss Vivian is popular on TikTok?
Oh, let's just move Miss Vivian's romance chat to somewhere else. Yeah, if you're not aware, we stream multiple things. We have streams of what we're doing with our 3D printing. We have streams like this with tech. We have Miss Vivian, who does her romance romance show, her once a month romance show, talking about romance books. We have some other ones in the wings. We may have other types of book shows coming up before too long. So kind of watch out for that as we stream different things.
Yes, but Miss Vivian's getting a following. So
Miss Vivian has an absolute following on TikTok. There's no question. No question. So Charlie, before you had to run out, so where are you at with Sony?
I mean, Sony is pausing the PSVR 2 production because they're noticing that there's a abundance of overstock.
Yes.
But you also got to understand the Sony PSVR 2 is also $550 for a headset. And that's on top of buying the PS5 console to use it on, which is also $500.
Yeah, so you're
$1,000.
At least
if you want
$1,000.
You
VR.
get a lot of things for $1,000.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Actually, you could do better by going other directions, but that's besides the point.
My bank account's very expensive.
Yes. So, and also the problem with the PSVR 2 is
that one does not roll off the tongue, man.
Not very well. Now, like PSVR did, but the 2 can just lengthens it to a point where it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, also the problem with the PlayStation VR 2 is that it has very little games to it. There's only like a handful of games that work with it, and they're very limited to PlayStation specific titles. There are some that you can buy on the store, but there's not much of a, how do I say? Like a collection. There's no collection.
There's no library. We always said library, which is kind of funny because we work in one.
Yeah, but like more compared to things like the PC or like stuff like that, where you plug in a headset to it and you go. Where the PlayStation VR 2 does not work on a PC at all.
Yeah,
so it's very limited to what it can do. It's a very good headset. Don't get me wrong. It's just very limited to only it being on a PlayStation.
Yeah. I mean, I think keeping things within your own platform makes some sense, because then you can kind of control the technology in a way that, this is what going back to Apple, what they always did is, if you kept everything in the Apple pipeline, then you knew it worked, and there was no question, like, does this thing work? When there were Apple clones out there and stuff like that, there was a lot of nightmares with, will this work with this particular Apple clone or not? I don't know. There's a glut of stuff. There just is.
Well, that and PlayStation also had some layoffs happen.
I think every tech company, that's right now. If you're in tech right now, there's huge amounts of layoffs. And some people say it's all AI. No, it's not all AI. It's literally a shift in the marketplace. COVID made a major change to how we did stuff, and a lot of companies flourished because, like, virtual consoles and stuff, because people were at home for one reason or another. They were home, and so gaming consoles, VR stuff, streaming services, all of that jumped in popularity and was used heavily. As the world is shifting back to going back outside and working out, and even people aren't working from home now. A lot of companies are pulling that from working from home. Some of these companies, we don't need VR stuff because we're not home. We're out mowing the grass, and we're out doing stuff, and we're going to parks, and going back to Cedar Fair America things and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. So, but after all these layoffs have just happened, now they're pulling back on their stock of. They're actually trying to sell the overstock they have at their warehouses.
Yes.
Before they continue making
stock.
more.
Yeah. New old stock.
So we'll see how this goes. But who knows?
Yeah. That is kind of out there.
Unless PlayStation pulls a really crazy cool thing where they allow people to use it on PC.
It'll be interesting, because the PlayStation has gone that direction a couple times, but mostly with Sony PCs. Again, keeping it within the same pipeline. Sort of like this one. I saw this recently. So the city of Bellevue, Washington. Okay. So shout out to Bellevue, Washington.
Very specific.
I don't even know where it's at. I hadn't mapped it yet. Has been awarded a $1.4 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to pilot the use of technologies aimed at making pedestrians safer when they cross intersections, because what they're doing is creating smart lights. So now, as most of us know, most lights are on some sort of timer. They have an exception, when a safety service vehicle, police, fire, ambulance, whatever, they send out basically a signal, the lights pick it up, and immediately try to change over so that whatever direction the safety service is going, that is the green light, and they can do whatever they want, and everyone else has to wait. But what they're looking at...
It's a little bit east of Seattle.
It's a little bit east of Seattle. Thank you for doing the background, Melanie. I appreciate that.
It makes more sense since it's kind of around Seattle.
Yeah, kind of around Seattle, which makes sense because it's the home of Microsoft and a lot of technology people. So here's the thing. What they're looking at is, it's not necessarily the safety service vehicles. That stuff's already taken care of. It's the fact that crosswalks and some of these lights, their timing needs to be more dynamic based on, say, a person who is differently abled. Whether they're using some sort of mobility device or whatever, the crosswalk may not be long enough for them to cross. Or a person who may move slower because, again, of disability or just of age, that they just don't move as quick as they used to. Children, things like that. It's a more dynamic thing. And so instead of, I don't know if it's ever happened to you. It's happened to me in a lot of cities. You're partway across the crosswalk. You thought you had enough time, and all of a sudden it's like, this thing is counting down to the last second. I've got to run to the other side because I probably will get run over.
Crosswalk in Cleveland by Playhouse Square?
Yes, the crosswalk by Playhouse Square. Anytime I've ever been in any major metropolitan city, outside, like Cleveland, Columbus, my favorites are Washington, D.C. and New York City, where, crossing the road is like a personal challenge. It's a little combination of American Ninja Warrior and Wipeout. If you're going to make it across the road. And so it's intelligent about that. And it still maintains the flow of traffic, but like, there may be like, because you see these videos of these people crossing the road, and like one of my favorites is, this kid's crossing the road and they're using kind of a mobility assist type of arm canes, and they lose one. and they're trying to pick it up, and like the light changes, and they're like, okay, I'm going to get run over because the cars start to move around them, and you know, someone runs out and rescues them, you know, and helps them get their crutch and get them across, you know. Yeah, so I'm kind of fascinated by it because I think that's the kind of AI, that's the kind of thought-provoking technology I think we need. You know, not to be confused with every time I think of AI, I go back to Maximum Overdrive by Stephen King. That movie where, you know, everything electronic because of a meteorite gains sentience and tries to wipe us all out because it's Stephen King, it has to. But I can remember the crosswalks in one of the chunks of the video. You know, as someone's walking across, there's this like older person. They purposely change the crosswalks so the trucks come through, and you can guess it's a Stephen King movie.
Of course, yeah.
You can guess it's a Stephen King movie, yeah. So Maximum Overdrive. I'm going to get some major kudos from my friends because that's something we watch every couple of years is Maximum Overdrive. The entire soundtrack done by AC/DC, if I remember correctly. Every single song in that whole soundtrack was AC/DC. Yeah. That also dates me significantly. Yeah. So what else you got there, Charlie?
How about powered off finding for Android phones?
Powered off finding. So back to our AirTag thing almost, but like
almost.
Hey, where'd you leave your phone at? You powered it off. You turned it on silent.
Now, see, that could be something I would use. I am famous for having my phone on silent and losing it.
Yes, phone on silent and losing it.
So with Google's release of the upcoming, or well, maybe no, it was past Pixel 8 and
Pixel
8 Pros, they're working on software to have enough battery in the background if your phone does die, to put out a location, and so hopefully to help you find your phone wherever it may be.
Okay.
So in coming updates, whatever it be, in Android 15, it's supposed to be a standard feature in Android 15.
Okay.
It will let you find your mobile device if it's powered off.
Okay.
Well, in like small terms. So far, it's only being worked on, and they're saying like the Pixel Fold and stuff will not get support for now. But for right now, it's mainly focusing towards the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro and beyond.
Okay.
They're going to add this feature into.
Interesting.
But yet, you know, comparing it to something like Apple or Find My iPhone comes in, Apple still doesn't have the thing for power off yet. I don't think.
Most places don't.
Most of them, you have to have your phone on and functioning for it to work. Yeah,
because I mean that's the trope right now with, you know, people being lost in the woods on a police procedural TV show. If they only had their phone on, we could find them. Hopefully, they'll turn their phone on at some point. I mean, I think, you know, Criminal Minds, NCIS, you name it, whatever police procedural it's been, there's at least one episode where if we only had their phone on, if we could turn their phone off. Or my favorite is when they, you know, hire the hacker who types like, you know, like this. It pains me to watch, by the way. Any IT person, these hackers, it's nails on a chalkboard. I'm serious. But I digress. Yeah, we can turn it on remotely. Yeah, not so much. Don't work that way. You know, so interesting. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. I've been interested to see what Google's been doing with some of the Android
well, they're trying
updates.
to. I think their interesting thing about Google is they're going for substance versus flash. Apple is still trying to go with the flash because they want things to be exciting. But
Okay, I got another question.
Yeah.
So my questions have tended to be more business oriented.
Correct.
Technology. So is Google then? Is the assumption then that Google's trying to play the long game, knowing that stuff gets replaced and whatever? I mean, it seems like you're trying.
Is Google playing the long game? Google is definitely playing the long game when it comes to building in functionality, long-term functionality, to make their devices superior to other devices because they have more ingrained functionality. You know, it's the problem with most devices is you lose interest when the thing, whatever the thing is, whatever feature is like the thing, falls by the wayside. Either you don't use it anymore or it's been supplanted by something else. Yeah, Google's playing the long game. I mean, you know, if I had, you know, there's a reason why I have a certain type of device because I look at functionality. You know, I mean, one of the big things for me is who has the better camera. You know, because I use that as my primary. That's my primary camera right now is my phone, because it's with me more than my other cameras. So let's jump over to. I'm going to do something funny and weird.
Okay.
Because I like this. The world's most expensive meal will potentially cost you $495,000. So just shy of $500,000. It will be served in a space balloon. Space tourism, I love saying space tourism, firm has enlisted Rasmus Monk. I wonder if he's related to the artist. Yeah. Because his restaurant is Alchemist, which is a pretty famous restaurant. It's a 2-star Michelin restaurant. He's creating a space-themed meal for the company's space balloon flight. The company's called Space Perspective, and it's Spaceship Neptune. And what it is it's literally a hot air balloon that takes you up technically into space, but not into space entirely. And for space tourism, you will fly in this balloon, and it's like 12 miles an hour. It's going to take a while to get there. But once you're up there, you will be in Earth orbit. And we lost the stream. Maybe.
Because of power flicker. There we go.
Well, we may have lost the stream. We may have not lost the stream.
We'll see. It says live still.
It still says live. So we had a power outage there as I was talking because that's what happens. Let's see if we're still live. I'm curious.
I think so. We're still live on this screen.
We're still live on that screen?
I'm thinking the power redundancy kind of helped that one.
I think we're still live,
yeah,
so we're going to go
live.
with that.
Thank goodness
for battery backups.
Who put in battery backups.
The people who put in battery backups and change the batteries regularly? Yes.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Look, Morgan says I see you.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
We're still alive.
Thanks,
Let's
Braxton.
go.
Thanks, Morgan. So yeah, hey, battery backups. Boom.
It wasn't even the advertisement portion of this show.
I know. Your local friendly neighborhood IT people will be more than happy to put in battery backups for you. Not us, not at your home, but here at the library. Nah. So yeah, space tourism. So Spaceship Neptune. It's a balloon that goes up, and then you're kind of in a little pod below the balloon, and you'll be able to have your basically just shy of $500,000 meal. I'm assuming, of course, the travel is part of the meal and it's part of the experience without question. But okay. So I have an infinite amount of money. What am I going to do with that infinite amount of money? I'm going to have a 2 Michelin star meal in space. I could, fund a whole bunch of stuff and do a bunch of education things, but that's not how it works. But yeah, so I'm kind of fascinated. I'm fascinated by space tourism. And the reason I'm fascinated is, again, let's talk about that whole stagnation thing. If we don't push the envelope by some sort of space tourism, we're not going to go further with what we're doing for space exclamation.
Better than the submarine.
Better than the submarine. Oh, wow. We're not going to go there. We all know, but we're just going to skip that one. Yeah. But, it is interesting. And, this company is a little more stable than the company that did the submarine. But yeah, it actually is very fascinating to see how we drive and how we move forward with some of this stuff, because frankly, a lot of the stuff from the Apollo program was driven by the fact that, that's where Velcro came from. That's where a lot of stuff came from, is from that program that's now integral to everything we do every day. Though I was laughing. So I was reading the article about the meal, and they said it's beyond Tang and astronaut ice cream. Though if I went up into near Earth orbit, I darn near want astronaut ice cream as some kind of kitschy thing. It better be Michelin level astronaut ice cream. It's just free dry ice cream and whatnot, but still, come on, it's a thing. I want it. That's one of the reasons. One of my favorite things when I go to museums.
Right, you went and bought.
As a kid, even as an adult, I'm like, my son and I eat astronaut ice cream every single time we go to some museum that has like sciencey stuff, because they always have it. So Charlie's double checking to see how we did across the power.
I was just making sure PCs were all still on. No, that one has power redundancy to it.
Yeah, we have battery backups on our 3D printers now as well.
Not the Ultimaker, but the Ultimaker has a power redundancy feature, so it will keep going after. It has like a
recovery feature.
Yeah, it has a print. I mean, I can make sure it's still up. Yeah, it's still going.
Yep, we can see it.
I can see it still going.
Okay, so we watched it.
It may have
remotely.
paused. It may have paused for a
and got
couple
itself back
seconds,
together
but
again.
no, it's
yeah,
good.
it's pretty good about that. We like that.
Well,
So, all right. We've got a couple more minutes. Do you want to do another story, Charlie, or want me to do one?
Let's do.
What do you got?
Do we want to talk about Hertz, or we want to talk about
Those are all kind of depressing,
the
dude.
$1,300 projector?
Oh,
from LG.
$1,300 projector. Let's do that. Let's go out on an expensive high,
All
just
right,
like I did.
so $1,300
Okay.
for a Cinebeam Q LG projector.
Okay.
So it's essentially just a projector, portable projector, mind you,
Uh-huh.
with a laser light source. So
Okay.
it's not a bulb projector.
It's not a bulb projector,
but
which is good because bulb projectors are a pain.
But it's almost like LG made one of their TVs into a projector. So it has like the smart functionalities of like the TV. So you have all of your streaming apps and stuff on there. You can also use AirPlay.
Okay.
And Miracast, which I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
But that's new to me.
Yeah.
But it's only rated for 500 ANSI lumens.
ANSI lumens, huh?
Yep.
Ooh, 500 ANSI lumens.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a lot.
It's not.
It's not for $1,300.
But it's meant for dark spaces.
Well, of course,
and
it's meant
things
for dark
like that.
spaces.
That's
It's meant-
already where we know their problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because we've tried to use projectors outside.
They say they're great outside.
That say they're great outside.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying not 1,300 for 500 lumens.
The irony was, I can remember buying a very early LED projector or LCD projector for my first library, and I want to say I spent about $5,000 on that thing because that was our projector. I mean, we were moving away from opaque projectors. And is it short throw? No, I don't think it's short throw, Braxton. No, it looks like a traditional projector you'd put out into a field somewhere. But yeah, my very first projector, that was like we were replacing the overheads, we were replacing the opaque projectors. That was going to be our first digital projector, and because I had borrowed one from another library for some classes I was teaching, because that was going to be the new thing, is I was going to teach the Windows 95 classes.
Yes, Windows 95.
Windows 95 and Windows 3.1 classes with the projector.
Yeah, this one looks like a regular projector.
Yeah, it looks like a regular throw projector.
Doesn't seem like
it's not.
Yeah,
it's not
definitely a
short throw.
throwing projector. Yeah.
No. All right.
Yeah, it's not like the ones that you have to sit up against the wall and just projects onto the screen.
So let's see. We're got like 3 minutes left.
I think you can do one.
Let me do one more story. So, Blue Origin, going back to the whole space and privatization stuff. So 2 Blue Origin employees have left Blue Origin, started their own little startup, and they're looking to start mining helium-3 off of the moon. Because helium-3 is incredibly rare on Earth, but very prevalent on the moon because of the solar wind, which is blocked by ionosphere, magnetic field, all that stuff. Why is helium-3 important, that isotope? Nuclear fission. Fusion. Sorry, I said fission. I meant fusion. Man, I always screw those up. Bringing together, not splitting apart. So, theoretically, the power source that's going to power the future is fusion reactors. This is kind of an integral thing to modern fusion reactors. Without helium-3, right now with our current technology, we're hard pressed to do that. And so if you can imagine, there's a movie, by the way. I can't think of who stars in the movie. I just saw it where he's mining on the moon and then discovers he's actually a clone. I can't remember the name of the sci-fi movie. I haven't seen it. I just saw a preview for it. It's an older movie. But I'm kind of going to watch that. So literally, if you can imagine these autonomous rovers, think of a Roomba, a space Roomba that goes around collecting, not like Wall-E, no, more like a big space Roomba who drives around the surface of the moon, picking up helium-3 in theory and pulling it out of the dirt or moon dirt, I guess, and then processing it and then sending it back to Earth for us to pick up. This whole thing could also do water too, because there's a lot of water on the moon as well. So we'll leave with that future thing. So hey, if you're watching us later, we're still up on all of our platforms. This will also become a video podcast on Spotify. Feel free to ask more questions at any time. We're always here, the third Monday of the year, third Monday of the month. My brain's turned into it's Monday. Third Monday of the month at 11:30. So see you guys on the interwebs. I'm Shawn.
I'm Charley.
And Melanie's in the background. We should mic her up later.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you guys later.